Have you ever wondered which countries completely ban Islam? Places where being Muslim is not only illegal, but can lead to legal and social sanctions? Surprising, isn't it? But which countries are we talking about? And what lies behind all of this? Join me on this revealing journey through 10 countries where Islam is reportedly prohibited. Halfway through the video, I will reveal the only European country where 90% of the population is Muslim. That being said, let's begin. Asterisk 10. San Marino, one of the smallest and oldest countries in the world, is landlocked in the heart of Italy with a population of approximately 34,000 inhabitants. This microstate is predominantly Christian, more specifically Catholic. The presence of Islam in San Marino is practically non-existent, which has led to the implementation of laws restricting Islamic practice. These regulations, mainly established in the 20th century, aim to maintain the country's religious and cultural homogeneity. The perception that Islam could alter the social and religious balance has led to these restrictions, even though the Muslim community is minimal and the ban does not strictly translate into citizens' daily lives. San Marino has maintained an attitude of openness toward other cultures and religions on tourism and commercial levels. However, when it comes to religion, Christianity remains the central pillar of its national identity. The laws that restrict Islam are designed to prevent the introduction of external influences likely to destabilize social cohesion and the country's cultural tradition. Despite the apparent rigidity of these laws, the almost total absence of a Muslim community means that these restrictions are not perceived as a direct imposition, but rather as a preventive measure to preserve social stability. This situation reflects a cultural preservation policy that, although it may seem extreme, is deeply rooted in San Marino's history and national identity. Asterisk 9. Andorra. Continuing our list, we arrive in Andorra, another European microstate located between France and Spain. Andorra is known for its economy based on tourism and free trade, but also for its predominantly Catholic population. The Andorran authorities have implemented regulations limiting the presence of Islamic institutions, reflecting an effort to preserve the country's traditional cultural and religious identity. These restrictions have strengthened over recent decades, sparking debates around religious freedom and human rights. Although the practice of Islam is not widespread in Andorra, existing laws complicate the establishment of mosques and the organization of Muslim communities. This approach highlights the priority given to cultural and religious homogeneity. Andorra, despite its economic openness, has opted for religious cohesion that it considers essential to its social stability. Current regulations aim to prevent the proliferation of external influences that would challenge the Catholic traditions anchored in Andorran society. Furthermore, these measures raise important questions about how small states manage religious diversity and the tensions likely to arise between tradition and modernity in an increasingly globalized world. The capacity to preserve a singular cultural identity while accepting diversity remains a permanent challenge. Andorra, with its approach focused on cultural preservation, illustrates how certain countries choose to prioritize social stability over religious diversity. Point 8. Laos. In Southeast Asia, Laos presents a particular situation regarding the practice of Islam. This predominantly Buddhist country has implemented policies restricting Islamic practice based on the idea that this religion could create social tensions and disrupt community cohesion. Since the 1990s, Laotian authorities have rigorously regulated Islamic activities, limiting mosque construction and public worship practices. The Muslim minority in Laos is relatively small, mainly composed of immigrants and refugees who came seeking better living conditions or fleeing conflicts in their countries of origin. Despite its small numbers, the government has adopted a firm position to maintain religious and cultural stability by preventing the proliferation of external influences that could challenge the Buddhist traditions deeply rooted in Laotian society. Restrictive policies include the prohibition of active proselytism and constant surveillance of Islamic activities, complicating the organization and expansion of Muslim communities. These measures reflect the strategy of a government eager to preserve social cohesion and avoid potential interreligious conflicts. However, they have also sparked criticism from human rights organizations that believe these policies unjustly restrict religious freedom and the fundamental rights of Muslims in Laos. The dilemma between preserving cultural identity and protecting individual rights constitutes a recurring theme in many countries facing similar challenges in the context of globalization and migration. Asterisk 7. Bhutan, the Buddhist kingdom of the Himalayas, also figures among the countries that restrict the practice of Islam. This nation, famous for its gross national happiness philosophy, has adopted provisions designed to safeguard its cultural and religious identity. Bhutanese laws prohibit proselytism and the construction of Islamic places of worship, reflecting a cultural protection policy aimed at avoiding the influence of external religions likely to destabilize its ancestral traditions. The weak presence of Muslims in Bhutan has led to the application of these restrictions as a means of preserving social cohesion and the continuity of Buddhist practices that characterize the country's national identity. This governmental policy aims to maintain cultural homogeneity in a geographically and demographically limited environment. Moreover, the Bhutanese government has clearly displayed a preference for traditional religions that have been an integral part of its culture for centuries. These measures aim not only to protect cultural identity, but also to ensure the social stability of a nation that deeply cherishes its traditions. Nevertheless, this position has sparked debates around religious freedom and human rights. Since the imposed restrictions limit the possibility for Muslims and other religious groups to freely practice their faith, the situation in Bhutan illustrates the difficulty of reconciling cultural preservation and protection of individual freedoms in an increasingly interconnected world. If you're enjoying this content and want to stay updated with more revealing insights like this, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss our latest videos that explore important topics shaping our world today. Asterisk 6. Angola in Africa. Angola presents a complex context in which Christianity constitutes the dominant religion despite ethnic and religious diversity. The Angolan government has implemented laws limiting the practice of Islam, invoking the need to preserve national unity and avoid interreligious conflicts. These restrictions, established in the 2000s, include the prohibition of public Islamic religious activities and close surveillance of Muslim communities. The official justification for these measures is based on preventing potential tensions and promoting a unified national identity. The Angolan government fears that the expansion of non-Christian religious practices, such as Islam, might compromise social cohesion and trigger interreligious conflicts. Consequently, Muslim communities face significant restrictions regarding their ability to organize religious events, build mosques, and exercise their faith openly and publicly. These policies have raised concerns about religious freedom and human rights in Angola. They are not limited to restricting the free practice of Muslim faith, but also reinforce a dynamic of exclusion and control by the government. The situation in Angola reflects a tension between promoting a homogeneous national identity and preserving religious diversity, a dilemma that many countries face in contexts of cultural and religious plurality. Furthermore, these measures have heavily weighed on the daily lives of Muslim communities, often forcing them to practice their faith privately and overcome major obstacles to perpetuate their religious traditions. Constant surveillance and restrictions imposed by authorities have created a climate of fear and repression where freedom of worship is severely limited. This situation underlines the importance of religious freedom as a fundamental right and the need to defend it against repressive state policies. Asterisk, we have already reached the middle of the video, and Aspermized, Kosovo, a disputed region in the Balkans, is home to approximately 90% Muslim population, mainly of Albanian origin. This religious predominance rests on deep historical roots. Do you want to know more? We will reveal the historical reasons for this incredible phenomenon at the end of the video. 5. Myanmar, a country with rich ethnic and religious diversity, has experienced significant tensions related to the practice of Islam, particularly concerning the Rohingya minority. The Rohingya, predominantly Muslim, are subject to persecution and social exclusion, which amounts to a tacit ban on Islam in certain regions. Since the 2010s, governmental policies have severely restricted the religious rights of Muslims, aggravating conflicts and causing a humanitarian crisis of great magnitude. The situation of the Rohingya is one of the most striking examples of religious repression in Myanmar. Considered by many as an illegal and unrecognized population, The Rohingya suffer systematic violence, including forced displacement, physical attacks, and limitations on their religious practices. Governmental policies include the prohibition of Islamic practices, destruction of mosques, and close surveillance of religious activities, leading to a devastating humanitarian crisis. The lack of official recognition of the Rohingya as a legitimate ethnic minority has intensified the repression of Islam in Myanmar, creating a situation where the practice of this religion is practically suppressed. The Rohingya crisis has attracted international attention, highlighting serious human rights violations and the urgent need for solutions respectful of religious freedom and human dignity. This conflict illustrates the complexity of managing religious diversity in a country plagued by deep ethnic and confessional divisions. Furthermore, the persecution of the Rohingya has had a considerable impact on the region's stability, exacerbating tensions between Myanmar and its neighbors and revealing the fragility of human rights in contexts of conflict and exacerbated nationalism. The situation in Myanmar reminds us how religious intolerance can quickly degenerate into a major humanitarian crisis, affecting not only the communities concerned, but also regional stability and security. Point 4. Eritrea, located in the Horn of Africa. Eritrea is another country where Islam faces severe restrictions. Although it has a significant Muslim population, the Eritrean government has imposed laws limiting the public practice of Islam, invoking reasons of national security and social cohesion. Since its independence in 1993, Eritrea has maintained a strict regime, reducing non-Christian religious freedom of expression and seriously undermining the freedom of worship of its Muslim citizens. In Eritrea, restrictions include the prohibition of building mosques without state authorization and permanent surveillance of religious activities. The Eritrean government closely controls religious organizations and only authorizes the existence of structures conforming to state interests. This authoritarian approach to religion reflects a broader trend in certain states seeking to regulate and direct religious practice in order to maintain social and political order. The repression of Islam in Eritrea is not limited to hindering freedom of worship. It also creates a climate of fear and persecution. Muslim communities face significant difficulties in maintaining their religious traditions and practices. 3. China, Xinjiang region. In the immense Chinese territory, the Xinjiang region has become the epicenter of a global controversy related to the practice of Islam. The Uyghurs, ethnic and Muslim minorities, suffer systematic repression that includes the prohibition of religious practices, mass detentions, and close surveillance. Since 2017, Chinese authorities have reinforced these measures, justifying them by the need to fight extremism and separatism. The policies implemented in Xinjiang include the construction of re-education centers where it is estimated that hundreds of thousands of Uyghurs would be detained without trial. In addition, restrictions affect the wearing of traditional Islamic clothing, the practice of religious rituals, and the teaching of the Uyghur language. Widespread surveillance through advanced technologies and rigorous control has established a climate where the practice of Islam is very limited, profoundly affecting the daily lives of Uyghurs and other Muslim minorities in the region. This situation has sparked international condemnations and debates on human rights and religious freedom. The international community has worried about abuses committed in Xinjiang, including torture, forced disappearances, and violation of civil rights. For its part, China defends its actions in the name of national security and stability, rejecting criticism as interference in its internal affairs. The crisis in Xinjiang highlights the tension between national security and individual rights, raising important questions about the balance to be found between state control and religious freedom. The fate of the Uyghurs cruelly reminds us how religious repression policies can have devastating effects on the communities concerned, weakening trust and social cohesion in a region already marked by economic and political challenges. Point 2. Cuba, silver medal. This Caribbean island, renowned for its communist regime, also limits the practice of Islam. Although there is no explicit prohibition, restrictive governmental policies have considerably hindered mosque construction and public practice of Islamic faith. Since the 1959 revolution, the Cuban government has promoted state atheism, limiting religious activities that do not correspond to communist ideals. This promotion of atheism has particularly affected the Muslim community in Cuba, which encounters obstacles to organizing and openly practicing its faith. The absence of Islamic infrastructures and restrictions imposed on religious freedom of expression have created a context not conducive to the development of Islam, reflecting the government's will to maintain strict control over religious practices on the island. Moreover, the limited presence of Islamic institutions in Cuba complicates the creation of a united Muslim community. Restrictions imposed by the state have led Muslims to practice their faith discreetly, avoiding any public manifestation that could attract the attention of authorities. This situation has resulted in a lack of visibility and recognition of the Muslim community in Cuban society, limiting its capacity to influence the country's cultural and religious life. The relationship between the Cuban state and religious practice is marked by tension, prioritizing control and regulation of religious activities to avoid any challenge to the official ideology. This posture has negative repercussions on freedom of worship and human rights of communities in disagreement with the state, including Muslims. The situation in Cuba highlights the difficulties related to maintaining a policy of religious control in an environment where cultural and religious diversity can be perceived as a threat to ideological cohesion. Point 1. North Korea, first place. At the top of our list, we indeed find North Korea, the world's most isolated and totalitarian country, where the practice of Islam is totally forbidden. The North Korean regime, led by Kim Jong-un, tolerates no form of religion that is not aligned with the cult of the leader and the state. Religious practices, including Islam, are severely repressed, and any manifestation of faith can be sanctioned extremely harshly, going as far as forced labor or even the death penalty. The absence of civil liberties and omnipresent surveillance make the practice of Islam virtually impossible, as well as that of any other unauthorized religion. In North Korea, the state closely controls all forms of religious expression so that no religion can challenge the regime's hegemony. Existing religious communities are subject to constant surveillance, and any deviation from established norms can lead to persecution and severe punishment. Total religious repression in North Korea reflects the regime's priority to maintain absolute control over the population by eradicating any form of dissident or religious identity likely to challenge state supremacy. This extreme situation underlines the difficulties faced by religious communities in highly repressive environments, as well as the importance of human rights and freedom of worship on an international scale. Moreover, North Korea's closure and isolation complicate the collection of reliable information about the country's religious situation. However, testimonies from defectors and investigations by human rights organizations reveal an alarming reality of persecution and repression. The lack of religious freedom affects not only Muslims, but anyone wishing to practice a religion not conforming to the regime's official ideology. Why is Kosovo Muslim? The answer is simple. For more than 4 centuries, from the 15th to the 19th century, the Ottoman Empire dominated Kosovo, introducing Islam as the main religion through forced conversion and cultural influence. This period left a lasting imprint, integrating Islamic practices and traditions into the daily life of the local population. Furthermore, Islam in Kosovo is not only a religious faith, but also constitutes an essential aspect of Albanian ethnic identity, particularly after centuries of resistance and struggle for independence. The fall of the Ottoman Empire and subsequent conflicts in the Balkans, notably the War of the 1990s, have further reinforced this Muslim identity in the face of ethnic and national tensions. More recently, Kosovo declared its independence in 2008 without being universally recognized. The Muslim community remains a pillar of its social structure, supporting cohesion and culture in a complex geopolitical context. Thus, the prevalence of Islam in Kosovo results from centuries of historical influence and socio-political transformations that have shaped its contemporary identity. Conclusion: we have traveled through 10 countries where the practice of Islam is subject to severe restrictions or is totally forbidden. From European microstates to Asian and African nations, each of these places uniquely illustrates how political, cultural, and social dynamics can impact religious freedom. These prohibitions are not limited to hindering the practice of Muslim faith, but also reflect broader tensions related to identity, security, and social cohesion. It is essential to understand the underlying context of these measures to grasp the complexity of challenges encountered by Muslim communities in these countries. Religious repression is not content to restrict individual freedom. It also has profound repercussions on social stability and nations' cultural cohesion. The preservation of cultural identity and the quest for stability often conflict with fundamental human rights, generating a dilemma that many countries encounter in different forms. If this content has allowed you to broaden your perspective and better understand the reality of religious freedom in the world, don't hesitate to leave a like and subscribe to our channel to discover other revealing content. Your support helps us continue exploring important themes and informing you about subjects that truly matter. Thank you for staying until the end, and see you very soon for the next